Hey everybody, Eric Grenier here with Philippe J. Fournier for this episode of The Numbers. Philippe, how you doing? I'm starting to feel it, I gotta say.
Good morning, Eric. You know what? It's going very well. The early week, like Sunday, Monday, is quite a grind. This is when most media wants to ask me questions. And then it slows down a bit, and then it picks up again. So this morning, I'm feeling pretty good. We have tons of numbers to talk about. We are in, day 11 or something of the campaign. What about you, Eric? How are you holding up?
It depends on the day.
How about today?
Today it's okay. I wasn't feeling it too much this morning, I have to say. But you know what? Once I see your face, everything just gets better.
Eric. You're too kind.
Let's talk about probably the polls. Let's get into it a little bit.
Yeah.
It as we go along in this, it starts to become a little bit more difficult to find something that is really capturing my attention, because I do feel that we are starting to get into a stable kind of position in the polls.
Yeah.
We have those daily trackers that are coming out, and they're not really showing huge variations from day to day, which is good. We don't want to overreact to that. But we're not really seeing either developing trends or sudden movement or anything like that. So it does seem that we are settling, at least at this stage, into a place where the Liberals are somewhere around 43%, and the Conservatives are somewhere around 37, 38, and that the NDP is somewhere around 8.
Yeah.
That seems to be where things are.
Yeah.
And every new poll that we come out is a few points on either side of that. What are you making of these solid trend lines so far?
Well, we had consecutive polls from Léger that show 44-38, and also consecutive polls from the Angus Reid Institute that showed 46-38. Mm-hmm. So two of the biggest firms see a very stable race. And the dailies that we have, you said we don't see much variation, but if we compare not to yesterday or the day before, but last week, we see that the Liberals have widened slightly their lead, especially in strategic places, Ontario. And I mean, the numbers in Quebec are getting a little out of hand. We always, again, we never put too much stock into a single poll. We look at the overall trends. But, I mean, right now the trend is between 15 to 23 points a lead for the Liberals in Quebec. And this is starting to make me quite uncomfortable, because although Liberals first in Quebec, fine. Liberal plus 10 in Quebec, that's big, but it's fine. Léger has a plus 20 in Quebec. And this morning, again, not too much stock on a single poll, but the latest Nanos research update, with a decent Quebec sample size, 51 Liberal, 24 Bloc.
Yeah.
That's a lot of seats for the Liberals in Quebec. I mean, I just did a little testing. This is over 50 seats in the Liberals in Quebec.
Well, when's the last time the Liberals got that much of the vote in Quebec? It's probably 1980.
1980.
Right?
Would have to be 1980, right?
Before the emergence of the Bloc, before the Mulroney's breakthrough in Quebec.
Before the charter.
And we haven't actually seen any party get over 50% since Mulroney did it in 88. And I'm not sure if he did in 88, but he definitely did in 84.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, that is just huge numbers. And yeah, you look at this Nanos poll, and you do see a regional split for sure. 51 in Ontario, 51 in Quebec, 58 in Atlantic Canada for the Liberals, 47 in British Columbia. And then in the prairies, which for Nanos includes Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, 64 for the Conservatives, which is one of the highest numbers we've seen in that region. I'm curious to see if anybody else is going to show those kinds of numbers in the prairies, because we have seen better numbers for the Liberals in Alberta. We've seen them leading in some polls in Manitoba when we have those numbers.
Yeah.
Saskatchewan doesn't seem like there is that much movement, but that could be certainly something to watch if we see it in other surveys. But yeah, some of the numbers are just extraordinary to see in the midst of a campaign. And it also makes me uncomfortable in the sense that, I mean, when we have to project the outcomes for it, some places it's easy. You know, Ontario, you just take the last map and then you add a few more red ridings to the edges of where they won them last time. But then when you're looking in British Columbia, when you're looking in Quebec, when you're looking in places in the prairies, it does get a little bit more difficult to know what to make of some of these numbers.
I mean, by the way, just parentheses, 1988, Brian Mulroney, Progressive Conservative, 53% of the vote in Quebec, 63 seats. So more seats in Quebec for the PCs than in Ontario. Interesting. But to go back to, that's a lot, right? But to go back to today, you mentioned BC, but before, I want to talk about BC, but before we go to Quebec, I'm hearing like, word that even in the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, the Liberals are back. I'm hearing word that I was asked whether Bernard Généreux, he has a seat in the Chaudière-Appalaches, was safe. And I was like, well, of course Bernard Généreux, the Conservative, is safe. But then, I'm hearing more and more echoes. You know, Trois-Rivières, we mentioned Trois-Rivières a few times on this podcast. It was won very narrowly by the Bloc Québécois over the Conservatives last election. Liberals were not far behind in that one. And you look at these numbers right now. I mean, I don't remember the last time the Liberals won Trois-Rivières. That's been a while. Unless I'm mistaken, maybe, no, they didn't win it in 2015. But
I think they did. I think they did. It was like a really close race.
But still, this is not a natural place for the Liberals to win Quebec. Also, suburbs of Montreal, usually dominated by the Bloc. Again, remember, people, that the last election, the Liberals beat the Bloc in a popular vote by, I think it was 2.5 points, and they had 3 more seats. If they win by 20 in Quebec,
or more,
I mean, it's insane. And so it's hard to look at this map. And we said on the onset, I think the first podcast of this campaign, we said we're gonna have a weird map. We have a realignment right now in this country, with the NDP going down, with the Bloc having difficulties, and with the Conservatives polling very well historically, but just below Mark Carney and the Liberals.
Yeah, we're seeing these numbers all over the place. It doesn't really matter which region we're talking about. And I do want to get into some of the regions first, but let's stay at the national level just for a minute.
Okay.
So the polls that we've seen over the last little while have been pretty uniform. I mean, if you're looking at most of the polls, you see between 42, 46 for the Liberals. You see usually between 36, 39 for the Conservatives, and you usually see between 6 and 10 for the NDP.
Yeah.
For you and I, we see the kind of numbers that pop up every day, and they look normal, and they, in the sense that they look normal in the context of the other polls that are out there. Yeah. Then once in a while, we do get some numbers that seem very different. There was an innovative research poll that was published yesterday. It had a 1-point lead for the Conservatives. Yeah. We've seen that the Abacus poll and the last one they put out a little while ago, I'm curious to see what they'll have next time, had a tie.
Yeah.
And we do see some numbers from Poilievre, for example, on the Curse of Politics podcast, that the gap is 10 points or more for the Liberals. So it is noon, which means my cat Mercy is now meowing again because she was just fed.
It never fails.
All right. And anyway, so what do we make of that? How do you explain that when you see some of these gaps that are as much as 10 points for the Liberals and then a tie or a 1-point lead for the Conservatives?
So first thing, early in a campaign, there are usually more undecided voters and people who just began to tune into the campaign. So, by the way, people, it's normal to see wider variations early in the campaign, and then it narrows a little bit, or usually it does, at the end of the campaign. So that's not abnormal. And I was asked many times yesterday by journalists and others, so why the big spread? So before that innovative poll was released last night, the Conservatives basically were polling between 35 and 40. That's an entirely reasonable bracket, right? It's 5 points. It's fine. For the Liberals, though, if you exclude Abacus data and ECOS, so the ones at the extremes, all the polls show between 44 and 46, or 43 and 46. That's also a very reasonable bracket. But then you have Abacus data at 39, and then you have Ecos at 48. So it stretches a little bit the fabric here. We'll see where they go, but I am not too worried about the spread in the polls right now. If in the last week of the campaign, or in the last few days of the campaign, we still see that spread, I think it could be more problematic, because that means that somebody will be wrong. But if you have the Liberals between 43 and 46, you are well within the averages right now. So it seems like a boring answer, saying that don't freak out, this is a normal spread. But now Innovative at 37 for the Liberals, that is much lower than what the others are saying, especially the other online firms. Like the Angus Street has 46 and the Innovative has 37. That is stretching it a little bit, yeah.
Well, we have seen from Innovative, and at least in the last little while, Abacus have been sometimes more likely to show that closer race than we've seen from other pollsters. So I'm not shocked to see it from Innovative. And it's worth pointing out that we don't really see any disagreement on where the Conservatives are.
No, we don't.
There's no poll that has them up in the upper 40s. There's no poll that has them in the really low 30s. It's pretty clear where they are within a couple points. When we do see the Liberals high, the NDP tends to be really low, and the Bloc also tends to be pretty low. When we see Liberals low, the NDP and the Bloc tend to be doing a bit better. So I think that is really the question, that if the NDP or the Bloc ends up doing a bit better than expected, that is almost certainly all going to come from the Liberals. If they end up doing on the poorer side of what we've seen in some of the polls, then the Liberals win not only majority, but a 200-plus seat majority. That seems to be the disagreement, which kind of makes sense, because I think those are the voters are the most recently added to the Liberal total, right? Yeah. I think that we saw that a lot of the initial movement came from the Conservatives, then it was from the NDP, and then the election began, and since then it's been from the NDP and the Bloc over the last few weeks, right? Because the Conservatives, if you look at the line, their line is kind of steady. Yeah. It's the other two parties that are really on the move over the last little while. So people will see these numbers come out. Don't live or die by any of them. Nope. If your favorite party is doing well in one poll and you think that poll is true, it might be because it's your favorite party that's doing well in the poll. So have a little self-reflection, and to quote, Mark Carney, look inside yourself.
Well,
yeah.
Partisanship, just as like beauty, is very much in the eyes of the beholder. Let me tell you the latest numbers in Ontario, Eric. Innovative has a tie, 41-41. Abacus data has Liberal plus 3. Ipsos has Liberal plus 4. And all others have Liberals plus 8, 9, 10, and 12. And Pals Data has Liberal plus 19 in Ontario. Maybe a bit extreme, but so even the best poll for the Conservatives, which shows a tie in Ontario, considering the Innovative, the Liberals win Atlantic Canada, do well in BC, and lead in Quebec, that's still at least a plurality of seats, a minority for the Liberals. There's no scenario in either of these polls, whether they're closer or they're not, where the Conservatives win unless they're wrong. The polls would have to be wrong right now to pull a Conservative win out of this.
Even their best polls would need to be wrong.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So
the best polls right now for the Conservatives would point to maybe a big Liberal minority government.
Yeah.
And the best polls for the Liberals would point to, as I said, the plus 200 seats. So that is kind of the range of outcomes where we are right now in the polls. And the polls would need to be the consensus would need to be wrong by a lot to give the Conservatives the win. But even the best polls for the Conservatives would still need to be wrong by a bit in order for the Conservatives to win. That's why both of us give, I think now, 99% chance, if the election were held today, the Liberals win the most seats.
Yeah. So what's your latest projection, Eric? What do your numbers say?
Okay, well, across the country, for seats, I have 201 for the Liberals
Wow.
They've been at 200 for the last couple days, 117 for the Conservatives. I have 20 for the Bloc, 4 for the NDP,
4.
and 1 for the Greens. So the range for the NDP I have is from 1 to 9. And I mean, for the other parties, I have pretty big ranges too, 179 to 215 for the Liberals, 109 to 133 for the Conservatives. But that's the portrait as I see it right now. The Liberals are standing at that 200 seat mark.
Wow.
And almost all of it is from the NDP and the Bloc, at least net. I mean, there are some Conservative seats, but the Conservatives 117, only a handful of seats down from where they were last time.
So I have 198 for the Liberals.
You're a fool. It's obviously 200 million. Amateur.
I have 121 for the Conservatives. What do you have? 117?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. I have 16 for the Bloc. That's not possible, is it? It's possible. If
Well,
they lose Quebec by 20 points, it's possible.
Yeah. My lower range for the Bloc has them at 15. So.
Okay. Oh, okay. So we differ on this because my lower range goes to 6.
Well, I think your ranges are a bit different from mine. My like super low range has them down to 12.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we overlap.
But my extreme ranges, if anybody goes to the poll tracker, you can choose the likely and the min-max. The min-max is more or less like the polls are wrong scenarios.
Yeah.
The likely is more like the model is wrong. Like the model can't be as accurate as that, right?
Right. Okay.
So that's kind of how I kind of see the two of them. But yeah, 6 seats for the Bloc. Wow, that would be.
That would go. We're back to 2011 and substitute Jack Layton for Mark Carney. Basically, don't react to that. It's just the numbers right now for the Bloc. I mean, could they recover? I think if you ask me which party is most likely to recover between the Bloc and the NDP, my answer would be the Bloc. The Bloc still has only Quebec to campaign on. We have tonight, on Thursday night, on Radio-Canada, we have this format that I don't think exists in English Canada, but basically it's all leaders will meet with the 3 anchors of Radio-Canada, and they get basically drilled on questions. And last time around in 2021, it was really good. So it's like a debate, but not between the candidates, between 3 journalist anchors and the leaders. And those interviews were not easy last time around. So they're doing it tonight. And there's also the debate. Yep.
Of note, 4 of the leaders will be doing it in person. One of them will not.
Which one won't be there?
Do you want to guess?
I guess it's Poilievre, but really?
It is. Yeah.
Poilievre is not there?
No, he's doing it by remote. He's going to be somewhere in Toronto or something like that.
Wow. Okay.
Interesting, I thought. But you're right. That will be a little bit of a moment to watch. And I agree with you because also Yves-François Blanchet is still relatively popular. His own numbers are fine, right? It's not like Singh, whose numbers have gotten really bad over the last few months. And in both 2019 and 2021, the Bloc started those campaigns pretty far behind.
Yeah.
And they managed to get back into the race. In 2019, it was the French language debate. Blanchet did fine. It helped him. And then in the 2021 election, it was the English language debate.
That's right.
Which, because of a question based on identity politics, it ended up getting the Bloc's kind of raison d'etre back into the conversation there, right? So the debates, I think, will be an important moment for Blanchet and the Bloc. And by extension, the Liberals. Because... the Conservatives, with the Bloc dropping, the Conservatives might be able to pick up 2 seats from the Bloc, maybe 3, 4, if things go really well for them. But for the Liberals, we're talking about 10, 15 seats that could swing based on a movement in the polls, right? And then suddenly the Liberal majority doesn't look so solid anymore.
Yeah.
So that'll be an important thing to watch tonight.
I have 7 seats for the NDP. My lower range goes down to 2. And that 7 is quite higher than yours. It's almost double.
Right? Yeah, 3 seats. Yeah.
The thing is, I give incumbents a little bonus which I think is, it's reasonable. It's you look at how some good incumbents sometimes overperform their party, But also, we've seen a little more double digits numbers for the NDP of late. We don't see the sixes anymore, although Léger still had 7% for the NDP in the last poll. So the NDP is still too low for the Conservatives' taste.
Oh, yeah.
But if they can go back to 10-11%, it could make quite a difference in the seat count. We'll see. But obviously, as we said many times, a number to watch for the NDP is what's happening in BC. And we know the NDP has many incumbents and many seats to protect in BC. And the latest Léger poll, Eric, had an oversample in BC. So it's not that big of a sample, but it's reasonable. It's 500 just in BC. The numbers. Liberals, 41. Sorry, no, that's the total with the undecideds. Decided voters, 48 for the Liberals, 38 for the Conservatives, 8% for the NDP. Which means if that 8% in all of BC is close to the mark, it's 2/3 or 3/4 of the NDP vote that has just evaporated compared to 2021. So what do you make of those numbers in British Columbia, Eric?
The overall numbers are largely in line with some of the averages. I think I have a 6-point lead in my average in BC for the Liberals, so this is a 10-point lead, and considering the sample size and all that, that's not too unusual.
Yeah.
And I think I only have the NDP at, what do I have them at? 12% in BC. So having them at 8% isn't that different. But it gets to the question of whether any of their incumbents can survive.
Yeah.
Because they have some regional results. Now, the regional results are smaller samples, but they're all still pretty much the same. They have in the city of Vancouver and in the rest of Lower Mainland, which once you combine them starts to get to a more respectable sample, the NDP is between 7 and 8%.
That's terrible.
And that's half of their caucus is from BC.
Yeah.
So for them to win any of those seats with 7 or 8%, like it really has to be concentrated in a handful of ridings. It starts to get a little bit even hard for you to do the math. I did the same thing in Manitoba recently, just to go off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Okay. The rough numbers, I'm going off my memory, but the NDP had about 132,000 votes in Manitoba.
Okay.
Their vote in Manitoba, if we assume it has been cut in half, means they got 66,000 votes to go.
Yeah.
If you look at their 3 ridings that they want to win, my estimate was that they needed to have roughly 32,000 votes across those 3 ridings to win them, to get to at least a winnable number of votes, which means that in Manitoba, half of their votes would have to be in 3 ridings.
3 ridings.
The same kind of thing would be happening here. Their vote has come down so much in British Columbia that to win half of their incumbents to survive, their vote would have to be super concentrated in just a few ridings, to an extent that starts to get really implausible
and silly. And
yeah.
I mean, they won't get negative votes in seats they don't hold right now. It's that math doesn't work.
They have 14% in Vancouver Island, which again needs to be concentrated pretty much in just a handful of ridings. The expectation would be they'd be most competitive in, Victoria, Esquimalt, Saanich-Sooke, ridings like that in the south end of the island. But again, the Liberals are at 45 in Vancouver Island. 51 to 52 in Vancouver and the rest of the Lower Mainland.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to win those NDP seats. With these kinds of numbers, it's hard to say that our models are not being correct about what's happening at the local level, because we see these more localized numbers and they're exactly the same.
Yeah. And the rest of BC, so outside of Lower Mainland, Vancouver and Vancouver Island, so that's the Rockies, the north, we don't expect the Liberals to do well because they rarely do, right? Yeah. Or I want to say never, but it's been a while again. So in the numbers, 47 Conservative, 42 Liberal, 6 NDP, and that's in the rest of BC. Mm-hmm. So that means that even in the interior, the Liberals are doing okay. They might not win many seats or any.
They could win Kelowna, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, if they take that NDP vote. Kelowna's in play, and I mean, you have a better memory than I, but trying to remember last time the Liberals
they did win
won
Kelowna in 2015.
2015. So in a majority, basically, they win it in a majority. So wow.
Yeah. So that's what things look like in BC. I'm grateful to have these more detailed numbers for British Columbia, because I think a couple episodes we were talking about how we don't really know what's happening in BC.
Yeah, that's right.
And these numbers kind of help. But just having the Liberals at 48% is just an insane number when you think about that's like double the support they had in the last election.
They had 27, so that's 21 more points. Yes, that's huge. That's huge. So, Léger also had an oversample in Ontario. 49 Liberal, 39 Conservatives, 8 NDP. That looks identical to BC.
Yeah. It's also almost identical to my current average in Ontario. So
Right.
the overall numbers make sense.
Yeah. Hamilton, Niagara, again, small sample sizes. 54 Liberal, 34 Conservative. In the East, so I guess what is the East? Everything east of Durham plus Ottawa?
Yeah, it'd be like Ottawa, Kingston, and and
those
the rural
regions.
areas in between.
59 Liberal, 27 Conservatives. That's a lot. I mean, the Liberals would win a few rural seats in there with those numbers.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it would be in Ottawa, but
that's true.
like they probably sweep everything except Carleton and Ottawa, and they win Kingston. And then in 2015, they were able to win seats around the Bay of Quinte and like sort of that area, Belleville, and so those seats could also go back to the Liberals with these kinds of numbers. And again, you look at the NDP, and some of the numbers in this poll were a little bit odd to understand. A 5-point lead for the Liberals in the GTA, which seemingly from the numbers includes Toronto. So that's a bit unusual.
Yeah.
But you look at the NDP numbers. They're at 9% in Hamilton, Niagara, Southern Ontario, which in Léger's category is like Southwestern Ontario.
Yeah.
9% in the East, 7 in the North, 6 in the GTA. So there's not like a pocket of NDP support. And once again, you have to go to the same thing I said before. If they're going to win Hamilton Center, pretty much all of their Hamilton Niagara vote has to be in Niagara in Hamilton Center.
Yeah.
And it's just hard for that to happen, especially when the Liberals are at 54% in that region. It just looks like in a lot of these seats, and I think we're going to see this on election night if these numbers hold, is that in a lot of ridings that used to be blue-orange fights, a lot of that orange vote is just going to go to the Liberals in a super kind of transference of votes from one to the other. And then suddenly these are red-blue fights.
Wow.
We have that poll, which I think is probably a little bit too much, but that poll in Saskatoon that had just a couple-point lead for the Conservatives in the city. And the only way that would make sense is if pretty much the entire NDP vote was going to the Liberals in Saskatoon, in a city that is normally more of an orange-blue fight. So there could be there's going to be lots of surprises on election night if these numbers are true and if these numbers hold.
Yeah. There was also an oversample in Quebec in that poll, but Léger has not released the complete report yet. I don't know why it's not there, but the article Journal de Montréal, 43 Liberal, 23 Conservatives, 23 Bloc. In the chart of Léger on the Journal de Montréal, the Conservatives is above the Bloc, even though they're tied. So maybe in the decimals, I don't want to play a little games here, the NDP at 5, Greens at 3. So I wish we have the oversample from Quebec because we can see Montreal, Quebec City, and the regions. Last time Léger released a large Quebec-only poll with federal numbers, we saw some funky numbers in Quebec City. Conservatives were first. That's not a surprise, but the Bloc was third. And the Bloc has 2 seats in the Quebec City area. And with those numbers, they're not winning them. So... yeah, Quebec City would be dark blue except for the downtown and Saint-Augustin, Cap-Rouge, Sainte-Foy, which is Mr. Lightbound and Louis Hébert. So, yeah.
We'll see what other kind of numbers we get over the next little week. I'd love to see some more detailed numbers in Atlantic Canada just to confirm that it's all pretty uniform across the area.
It looks pretty red, huh?
When the Liberals are approaching 60%, it's hard to believe that there's not much that's going their way. And I feel like I need more numbers from the prairies and from Alberta. Because the regional-wide numbers, the Saskatchewan-Manitoba combined numbers, like what is actually happening in Winnipeg, what is actually happening in Edmonton and Calgary, and what do we make of that Saskatoon number? Are we actually seeing anything in Saskatchewan that could be in play? So hopefully we'll get some more of those kinds of numbers over the next little while from different pollsters, and maybe we'll have a little bit more clarity on what to expect on some of these regions, which could be pretty surprising on election night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't we move to just the riding of the day?
When you want to go first, Eric? I have one.
You have one? If you have one, go ahead, because I haven't really thought about one yet.
Well, okay. So the NDP seat, which we think is the most reliable in all of British Columbia, would be Vancouver East. There's other really good ones. But again, if the NDP is in single digits in the city of Vancouver, none of them are safe, and most of them will probably change colors. So I will pick Vancouver East as my riding of the day. I have it as a toss-up between the Liberals and the NDP. And for now, at least in my model, and I know this could be wrong, I've been told many times that, no, there's no way Jagmeet Singh loses his seat. You don't know that. With those numbers, you don't know that. He could prevail, maybe, but with those numbers, you don't know that. And so Vancouver East right now would be my last NDP seat standing. If the NDP should slip again, all of Vancouver would be red. What about you, Eric?
Yeah, there's got some interesting ones. I'm going to choose one that's a little bit of an inside one. Calgary Confederation.
Oh, okay.
So we heard this week.
Do tell.
We heard this week that someone who might be very well known to podcast listeners in Canada, that Corey Hogan is going to be the Liberal candidate in Calgary Confederation. And true to form, the announcement was made on April 1st. And most people who listen to that podcast, which understand that much of it is an inside joke, thought that it wasn't actually a real candidacy, that maybe it was an April Fool's joke. Turns out that Corey Hogan will be running for the Liberals in Calgary Confederation. It's actually one of the more interesting seats in Calgary. With the movement we've seen in the polls in Alberta, you have to think that George Shahal is safe in Calgary McKnight. That maybe the coattails of his support from last time in Calgary Skyview could maybe win them that riding. Calgary Centre is sort of the one that you would expect could also go to the Liberals if their numbers have gone up, especially if the Liberals are able to concentrate that vote behind them, the NDP vote as well. And then Calgary Confederation is a little bit like the next one. So in the last election, based on the modern boundaries, Conservatives had 45% of the vote, Liberals had 28%, and the NDP had 18%. With the shift we've seen, I have it actually leaning Liberal at this stage.
Wow. Okay.
By a few points. So I think that assumes that, I think I have it, if I'm not mistaken, 45-40. So it's almost like there's no other vote really for any of the other parties. So if that NDP vote gets behind the Liberals in Confederation, maybe they can win it. But again, it does depend a little bit on some of these Alberta numbers, because we've seen some polls that show the Liberals near 30% in Alberta, maybe above it. And then we've seen some other polls where the Conservatives are at 60 and the Liberals are in the low 20s. If that's the case, they're not going to win Calgary Confederation. But if we do see that it is that closer race in Alberta, that would be one of the ridings, I would say, that would be kind of on the bubble for the Liberals. So just an interesting little podcast thing. I think we can both confirm we're not running anywhere in this election.
I was going to ask you, should we announce that you and I neither of us are running in this election, just to make sure? Okay, because I'm not. You too?
No.
Okay.
I'm good, thanks. Not interested, but
I'm happy. I don't want to. This is not a life I'm looking for. Bravo to those people, like putting their face on a sign. I admire that. That's not for me. So no thanks.
Do we need more podcasters as MPs? I'm not sure.
I don't think so. He's good though. If he wins, it's gonna be. We're gonna miss it. It's a good podcast. So
a podcaster who becomes an MP might be more refreshing than an MP who becomes a podcaster. That's not usually
100%. Holy crap! Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Okay, well that'll be it for this week's episode, or today's episode. I'm already forgetting that we're doing multiple ones, because we are going to be chatting again on Saturday.
Yes,
and that'll be an episode that is only for our Patreon members. And last Saturday they missed something incredible. I put the video up on the Patreon page of Philippe spitting in his
glass.
In his glass. You got a good glass there? You sure?
delicious.
It's fresh. Okay. So anyway, if you want to join that, you can go to thenumberspod.ca and you can listen to us on Saturdays. And once we get to the end of the campaign, I think we're going to do sort of like a deep dive across the country, make our calls, something like that.
I agree. Yes.
And it'll be worth, hopefully it'll be worth the $6 a month. Philippe, I'm looking forward to next time we can chat in just a couple days, and we'll see where this goes from here.
Absolutely. Merci beaucoup, Eric. Merci beaucoup, tout le monde. Have a great week.